Dead Island 2 was announced back in 2014, showing off a setting that was entirely different from the original game, along with a tone that was filled with less sorrow and more fun. The question is, after 9 years since that announcement, was the wait worth it, and did it suffer the same fate of games that usually have the oh so terrible development hell? Well, before I begin, I'd like to point out that the developers themselves stated that the development hell for Dead Island 2, quote, wasn't that bad. Whether that means they simply dealt with the struggle or didn't struggle at all, I feel like it's important to share that detail, as I will treat this game as a game that would have came out today rather than a game that was made 9 years ago. To start us off, I want to give giant praise and a little bit of criticism to the part of a game that I don't think could have been better: the graphics and world building. It's difficult to believe that a game like this could look so amazing considering the engine it's built on still is UE4. Most games that look this good are built on UE5 or some other modern engine. The level of detail that goes into each map in the game is just breathtaking. Each building is designed completely unique from all the others, and this is amplified by the actual graphical detail that this game shows off. However, there is one complaint that I have to say about this, and sadly, it is one that probably could not be avoided without completely rebuilding the game onto a new engine like UE5. That complaint is that the maps are simply too small for me. Now, don't get me wrong, every inch of these maps is put into use. However, something that made Dead Island special for me was the sheer size of the map, requiring vehicles to traverse it in a reasonable time. Now you can run from one side of a map to the other side of a map in a matter of minutes. So, if you're like me and wanted that bigger space to simply walk around in, I am a little sad to say that the maps are more similar to how a game like BioShock handles its zones rather than the original Dead Island game. Now, one of the things that Dead Island 2 did completely right is the gameplay. It really feels like they focused on taking everything from the original game and making it better alongside new stuff that just flows kind of well. For example, melee combat in this game feels new player friendly enough for you to slowly pick your way through combat. However, if you know what you're doing, you can easily turn your simple weapons into machines. This learning curve isn't through something boring such as finding a better weapon. Instead, it's done through finding upgrades for your weapons, like adding a shock element to it, adding a damage perk, or increasing the agility the weapon gives you. There are just too many ways for you to play that I can't explain them all in this video. The point is, they absolutely nailed the free-flowing feel of Dead Island's lovable combat. One thing they did differently this time around is by making guns something you use only really for the bad situations, rather than running around with a weapon you constantly use. Sadly, I don't think we'll have characters running around with infinite ammo modded shotguns like there was in the original either. However, this lack of consistent ammo is not a bad thing, as the ranged combat now feels like a genuinely good shooter rather than the clunky and sometimes frustrating feel of the original. Both of the combat types are given plenty of spotlights, but there are little subsections of gameplay that just add to the experience tenfold, such as the new Fury system, or the countless different perks, or curveballs, the autophage system. All of it really adds up. Now, the autophage system isn't something I've personally experimented with, but I can tell by reading it that it can kind of change the game if you want it to. Everything I just mentioned is also switched up for each character or slayer in this game that you can choose. For my first playthrough, I chose Carla, simply because I like hearing Sombra talk, and this is the same voice actor, and they sound identical to each other, despite being completely different personalities. So, back to what I was saying, each slayer has a different stat proficiency than the last, and attitudes. So really, there was a type of slayer for everyone out there, even if you're not locked into one playstyle for each. But the variety in characters doesn't stop with the playable characters, as there are still the special zombies in Dead Island 2, such as the Crushers, Butchers, Suiciders, Floaters, etc. Some of them do have different names, but they act the same for the most part. Some of the special infected from the original games are missing, such as the Ram, but their abilities are kind of mixed in with the 5 special zombies in the game, so instead of having 12 semi-powerful special zombies, you have 5 extremely powerful special zombies, and even variants of those zombies to make them stronger. However, this brings up something that I personally was missing throughout the entire playthrough. Despite being in an entire city that this game is located in, everyone you meet is relatively on your side. Some are a bit neutral, but 90% of the time they're friendly. Having hostile humans like there were in the original games could add a bit more to the challenge of the combat. Okay, so it's finally time to talk about the story and tone of the game. I do want to preface this by saying Dead Island is not a story game. It certainly has a story, but it's never been the focus, and clearly isn't the focus here. So if story is all you enjoy, this ain't for you. Now that I've said that, let's make it clear. Dead Island 2's story is bland, boring, and kind of a downgrade from the already mediocre story of Dead Island 1. I believe this is mainly a fact due to the tone of the story, and maybe the entire game. The game doesn't take itself seriously a lot of the time. Outside of the side missions, it feels like a parody of the original game. You have characters joking to each other 50% of the time, and the other 50% is them explaining some weird plot device so that you get sent on another goose chase. It's really not important to me that Dead Island 2 has such a terrible story, but it is kind of disappointing that the biggest investment into the game is so meaningless. A final thing I wanted to talk about is something that makes the tone of the game actually bearable for me. That wonderful thing being the soundtrack. Right now, there is no official playlist of all the Dead Island 2 soundtrack songs, but they're all so good and match perfectly with the zombie slaying fun. For example, this section of the game is made perfect by this song by Saint Agnes.
There she is. Not looking so hot today, Nikki. Hey, bitch. Still think you're too good for Ronnie fucking Red?
Hey, I kinda knew that guy. All right, freaky fox, let's do this. Oh man, bad luck, Ronnie.
Beyond that section, the intro song is amazing as well. Link to that in the description. I wanted to thank you all for watching if you made it this far. I know this one is kind of a bit shorter, but truthfully, there isn't much to talk about for Dead Island 2. It's a game that you'll either really enjoy or really won't. For that very reason, I personally am going to give this game a 6 out of 10, because while I believe it is an objectively good game, I cannot say for sure if people will enjoy it if they don't already like the franchise. I do plan on making a bit more of a in-depth video on the differences between Dead Island 1 and 2 eventually, but for now, this is what we got. Again, thank you all for watching. I ask that if you agree with my points, enjoy my voice, or simply want to help out, please leave a like on the video. If you want to see future videos, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If neither of those things interests you, just know that your viewership is plenty for me. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.